A few months ago, I stepped out of the main railway station in Hamburg, North Germany. I hadn't actually been to Hamburg for years, and I was off to speak at a conference, and I had a head spinning with thoughts. Well, actually, I had a head spinning with an ear infection. I felt so ill, and my hearing had completely gone. I was really stressing about how or if I was going to make it through my talk and whether I was going to leave a gap in the program of this conference. But just a few seconds after stepping out of the train station, I encountered sign after sign on the pavement outside the Deutsche Schauspielhaus Theatre, all of them saying Kunst für alle, uh, arts for all. And I can't really explain it, but my shoulders dropped. Some of that stress fell away because here was a sentiment that really grounded me, that I could connect with. And I was really struck by just how universal that sentiment, arts for all, is, particularly in Europe, but I've seen it all over the world. So, it doesn't really matter where you look or where you travel, whether it's Kunst für alle, l'art per tutti, Theatre pour tous, List für alle, or even once upon a time, Arts Council England's strategy used to be called Great Art and Culture for Everyone. The idea that arts and culture, and yes, visitor attractions too, are universal in their appeal is something that a great many of us who work in this sector believe. We believe in universality and we hold it dear. I'm not going to spend very long preaching to the choir on this, but just to stress that research shows that arts and culture and heritage engagement are beneficial to the health and well-being of everyone, improving mental health, leading to longer and happier lives. There's some links there on the slide. Inaccessible culture, we know, reinforces social inequalities in art and culture, but also in society more broadly. And particularly for publicly funded organizations, there's a remit to serve that 22% that are living in relative or absolute low income. That last bullet we really believe, and yet this principle of universality is under threat like never before, thanks to all of the well-documented forces at play, the post-pandemic cost of living, funding cuts, increasing competition, and just a gradual erosion of our civic infrastructure. So if we do want to engage and attract this audience of up to 14 million people and be as universal as we can, do we need low prices at all? Are low prices actually necessary for universal access? Are low prices the same as accessible prices? Well, you would probably expect me to make this point, but it does bear emphasizing that low prices alone do not make an attraction, a venue, a theatre, a gallery accessible. To explore this further, we're going to look at some brand new market research, which we commissioned just last month. So I'm speaking in March 2024. So the fieldwork was undertaken in February 2024. It's a survey of 230 adults in 230 low-income households. We approached people living in London with an annual household income below £20,000 who were in receipt of income-based benefits to take part in this research. When you look at the demographic breakdown, for anyone who knows the London market, the graph here will come as no surprise. A majority of respondents, when we were looking for low-income households, came from Greater London, that is the outer reaches of the city, southeastern, eastern, and northern areas of London. The respondent base tilts towards those of working age because we specified recipients of working age benefits in our sample, and just under a third of respondents are under 25. That's great because there's so much evidence that says that getting people into the habit of engaging with art and culture at a young age can create that lifelong habit. About a third of our respondents have children at home, 2/3 don't, and the sample skews heavily to those identifying as female at 71%. So we approached London residents' annual household income below £20,000 in receipt of an income-based benefit, and we particularly reached those in outer east and north London who were younger, female, with no kids at home. Why did we particularly focus on London? We wanted to do that to try and control for some key factors that would have been more prevalent elsewhere. So we knew in London there was good availability of existing low price ticket schemes. These schemes exist. There was a good supply of a range of cultural attractions. So if people weren't particularly into theatre, they might have an option to go to museums and galleries instead because there's a good ecosystem. There's extensive public transport infrastructure, which should in theory remove a barrier to attendance, but we'll come on to that in a moment. And there are high levels of out-of-home marketing and promotion, things like bus adverts, tube adverts, display boards, so that people might be aware whether they've been targeted with a digital advert or not. that this cultural offer exists. 38% of our respondents in the light blue there on this chart have a household income below £10,000 per year, so they are definitely in absolute poverty. Just a few £100s a month to pay for rent, heating, eating, and everything else. And of our respondents, universal credit and housing benefit were the benefits most often mentioned, although 15% there are receiving personal independence payments, PIPs, and that implies a certain level of disability in the respondent base, because that is a payment made to people for assistance and independent living with disabilities. We're going to jump in at the deep end then and go to one of the final questions in our survey first. So, how much can this audience afford to spend on low-priced tickets? Using choice-based conjoint analysis, we showed our panel a choice of 3 different tickets, and we asked them which they would buy, if any. For each ticket, respondents would see a random mix of options related to whether and when proof of low income would be required, the booking channel, any restrictions on when the ticket could be used, and a price. We asked people to select one of the 3 tickets on offer, and then they'd be shown another random set of choices. In total, they'd make 5 selections, and they always had the option to say they wouldn't choose any of the tickets on offer. One of the key outputs of conjoint analysis is how important each of the factors we tested were relative to one another. So the green columns here are relatively positive factors, while the red is negative, where you can see that the least attractive option is booking by phone there on the right-hand side. Probably not a surprise, but the extent to which everyone dislikes this method is pretty striking. Attending during the week and presenting proof of low income on arrival are also negatives. More on the latter in a bit. Of the positives, booking online, being able to attend any time, and either being asked for proof of low income in advance or not being asked at all are the preferred combination. Basically, the fewer restrictions, the better, and combining all of these scores would make your low price offer the most appealing. Book online, attend any time, and either no proof or be able to provide proof in advance online. Another key output of conjoint is what we call price elasticity of demand. So we asked people what they'd be willing to pay to visit an attraction, and we tested prices from £1 to £10. You can see on the chart there that nearly everyone is willing to pay £1, 94%. Demand drops slightly at £3 to 87%, and even at £5, it's still 73%. Once you get to £10, we're down to just 35% willing to pay. So we've clearly lost a lot of the potential market at this point. But if you overlay revenue, how much money do you make at each price? So we're just multiplying demand by price here. And what's interesting is that you make a lot more money at £5 than you do at either £1 or £3. And despite losing all of that demand at £10, you still make nearly as much money. Now, of course, this isn't necessarily about the money, but I think it's still important to stress that £5 is a price that most people on low incomes and benefits said they were willing to pay. We asked a question there about having to provide proof of low income, and we explored that in greater depth. Whether or not you ask for proof and how you control for abuse is something that many of you will be well aware is something that's been discussed extensively around disability access, and it's part of the reason why Arts Council England are creating All In, the national access scheme for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people. Well, before we get to how people feel about proving they're from low income, awareness of the option to access these low price tickets at all is the first big issue. So we asked whether respondents were aware that some visitor attractions and performing arts venues offer low price tickets for people on income benefits, such as universal credit. Looking first just at visitor attractions, more than half, 53%, weren't aware. 22% were aware but hadn't attended, and 25% had used low price tickets. And of those, London Zoo, Kew Gardens, Tower of London, and the London Eye and London Aquarium came out on top. Interestingly, those last two, we don't believe actually offer what we would call ultra low price tickets, but they do offer student discounts, and the respondents who cited them were of student age. When we bring in performing arts organisations, the number of people saying they weren't aware shoots up to 64%. Aware but not used is 19%, and just 17% say that they have actually accessed low price tickets in the performing arts, and it was the Albert Hall, the Festival Hall, and the immersive experience, The Great Gatsby, that were mentioned the most. Next, we asked how the existence of tickets below £5 in visitor attractions or £10 in performing arts would affect intention to visit. So the light pink bar here is those who would be more likely to go if they had the option to buy low price tickets and were aware of them. So for visitor attractions first, the existence and awareness of low price tickets has a very clear power to increase visit intent. 71% say a low price ticket makes attending more attractive. That's reduced somewhat for the performing arts. So potentially we start to see the not for the likes of me factor kick in, and although we have also doubled the price to £10. What you're looking at here are two bars, one for a mix of performing arts, dance, musicals, plays, pop rock music, stand-up comedy, and another specifically for classical music. Still, even for classical music, where nearly a third say that they would never go no matter what the price, still half say that they'd be more likely to go if very low prices were available. When it comes to presenting proof of low income on arrival, more people feel uncomfortable about presenting proof than feel comfortable, but the spread is perhaps surprising. So the uncomfortables are in blue and add up to 40%. The neutrals in grey are 29%, and the comfortables in red add up to 32%. That, by the way, adds up to 101% if anybody is counting. There's a bit of rounding going on there. But if asking for proof, asking for it to be provided in advance is definitely preferred, even if that is logistically more difficult. We next asked what would make you more likely to purchase low price tickets if you knew they existed. So we offer people the following options: the ability to book online, knowing more about what's on offer, having someone else to go with, not being limited to specific times, not being limited by how many tickets you can buy at a low price, and not having to provide proof on arrival. Not having to provide proof on arrival on this chart was the least often selected. So earlier we saw when compared with the other options, it was much more desirable, but now in comparison to these other factors, it's of less significance. And in fact, when we look at the top three things that would encourage people to use these tickets, booking online is still the most important. Knowing more about what's on offer and having someone to go with are the top three factors. The first two are certainly within your control as a venue. The third factor of having someone to go with is more challenging to resolve.